The envelope felt heavy in my hands, heavier than it should have for what I assumed was a graduation card. I'd just walked across the stage 3 hours earlier, diploma in hand, summa cum laude in computer science with a minor in business administration. 4 years of 18-hour days, surviving on ramen and determination, working 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. I was exhausted but proud, ready to celebrate with my family. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. My parents had insisted on a family dinner at our favorite restaurant downtown. Just the four of us, Mom had said, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant something important was happening. As we sat around the table, Dad stood up with 2 envelopes, his face beaming with what I thought was pride for both his daughters. "We're so proud of both of you girls," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Sarah, graduating valedictorian from high school, and Maya, completing your degree with such distinction." He handed Sarah her envelope first. "Sarah, this is for you, sweetheart." Sarah, my 18-year-old sister, tore open her envelope with the enthusiasm of someone who'd never known disappointment. Her eyes went wide, and she screamed. Actually screamed. In the middle of the restaurant. "The keys to a car? Are you serious? Oh my God, thank you. Thank you. Thank you." She launched herself at our parents, tears of joy streaming down her face. A car. A brand new Honda Civic, as it turned out. Fully paid off, insurance covered for the first year, even a full tank of gas. I watched the scene unfold, my own envelope still unopened in my lap, assuming it contained something equally wonderful. After all, if Sarah got a car for graduating high school, surely completing a 4-year degree warranted something special too. "Open yours, honey," Mom urged, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out a bill. Not a card, not a check, not even a heartfelt letter. A bill. An itemized bill, printed on our home computer, detailing every expense my parents had covered for me over the past 4 years. Room and board during breaks and summers, $15,600. Food and groceries, $8,400. Car insurance on the family car I occasionally borrowed, $2,200. Emergency money they'd sent when my laptop died, $800. Even the cost of my graduation dinner tonight, $127.50. Total amount due, $27,127.50. "We know it seems like a lot," Dad said, his voice apologetic but firm. "But you're an adult now, with a college degree. It's time to start paying your own way. We figure you can set up a payment plan, maybe $500 a month." The restaurant noise faded to a dull roar. I stared at the paper, reading it again and again. Sure, I was misunderstanding something. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. "I don't understand," I managed to whisper. "Sarah gets a car worth more than this entire bill, and I get a bill?" "That's different," Mom said quickly. "Sarah's still in high school. She needs transportation for her senior year activities. You're graduated now. You need to learn responsibility." Responsibility? The word came out louder than I intended. "I worked 2 jobs through college. I took out student loans to avoid burdening you. I've been responsible for 4 years while living on 3 hours of sleep a night." "Lower your voice," Dad warned, glancing around the restaurant. "We're not trying to punish you, Maya. This is about preparing you for the real world." But Sarah was already posting pictures on social media. #blessed, #best parent ever, while I sat there holding a bill for existing, a bill for being their daughter. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Outside, I called my best friend Jen, my hands shaking as I dialed. They gave Sarah a car, I said when she answered, my voice cracking. They gave her a car, and they gave me a bill. For $27,000, for being their daughter for 4 years. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Are you serious? Jen finally said. Maya, that's not normal. That's not what parents do. That conversation changed everything. Over the next few days, I started really thinking about the pattern. Sarah had always been the favorite, the social butterfly, the cheerleader, the one who never challenged authority or had opinions that made anyone uncomfortable. I was the difficult one, the one who asked too many questions, who wanted to understand why instead of just accepting because they said so. When Sarah wanted to quit piano lessons after 2 months, they let her. When I wanted to quit after 2 years of begging, they made me stick with it, for discipline. When Sarah's grades slipped to C's, they hired a tutor and bought her a new phone as motivation. When my grades dipped from A's to B's during a particularly brutal semester, they threatened to stop helping with college expenses. I'd been so focused on earning their approval, their pride, their love, that I'd missed the obvious truth. It was never going to happen. Not the way it happened for Sarah. I would always be held to a different standard, always expected to give more and receive less. The bill was just the final crystal clear proof. I started making plans. First, I moved out. I'd been living at home to save money during my job search, but I used my emergency fund to put down a deposit on a studio apartment across town. I didn't tell them I was leaving. I just packed my things while they were at Sarah's graduation rehearsal and left a note on my pillow. Since I'm an adult who needs to pay my own way, I thought I should start by paying for my own housing. Don't worry about the bill. I'll be in touch about payment arrangements. The calls started immediately. Crying voicemails from Mom about how hurt she was that I'd left without saying goodbye. Angry. Messages from Dad about how I was being dramatic and immature. Confused texts from Sarah asking why everyone was upset and could I please come to her graduation party? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on my job search with laser precision. I leveraged every connection I'd made during internships, reached out to every professor who'd offered to be a reference, applied to companies in other cities, other states. Within 3 weeks, I had 2 offers. I accepted the one in Seattle, 2,000 miles away from the family that had made it clear I was more liability than daughter. The job was everything I'd dreamed of. Software development at an innovative tech startup, excellent salary, amazing benefits, and stock options that could be worth serious money if the company took off. I was good at what I did, really good, and for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. I didn't tell my family about the job until after I'd accepted it and booked my flight. Maya, please, Mom begged when I finally answered her call. You can't just disappear across the country. We need to talk about this like adults. Adults? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to me. Adults don't charge their children rent for existing. Adults don't give one child a car and another child a bill for the same accomplishment. That's not... You're misunderstanding the situation. Am I? Because it seems pretty clear to me. Sarah gets rewarded, I get charged. Sarah gets support, I get invoiced. Sarah gets unconditional love, I get conditional tolerance. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. If you leave like this, Dad's voice came on the line, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms. This family doesn't work if everyone just runs away when things get difficult. You're right, I said. This family doesn't work. I'm just the first one honest enough to admit it. I hung up and blocked their numbers. Seattle was a revelation. For the first time in my life, I was judged solely on my own merits. My coworkers didn't care that I was the difficult daughter or that I'd never been prom queen. They cared that I could debug complex code, that I stayed late when projects needed extra attention, that I brought innovative solutions to persistent problems. Within 6 months, I'd been promoted to senior developer. Within a year, I was leading my own team. The startup was growing rapidly, and my stock options were looking more valuable by the day. I made friends, real friends, who liked me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. I dated, traveled, took cooking classes, learned to rock climb. I built a life that was entirely my own, free from the constant weight of never being quite good enough. Meanwhile, I heard through social media and mutual friends that things at home weren't going as smoothly. Sarah's car had been rear-ended 3 months after graduation, and insurance didn't cover all the repairs because she'd been texting while driving. She'd enrolled in community college but was struggling with classes she'd never learned to take seriously. She'd moved back in with my parents after her retail job couldn't cover her expenses. My parents had expected their perfect daughter to launch seamlessly into adulthood, but she'd never learned independence because she'd never needed to. They'd solved every problem for her, removed every obstacle, and now she had no idea how to navigate challenges on her own. I felt a twinge of sympathy for Sarah. She was as much a victim of our parents' differential treatment as I was, just in a different way. But I felt no urge to return and fix things. That wasn't my job anymore. The first attempt at reconciliation came 8 months after I'd left, when my grandmother had a heart attack. Mom called from the hospital, her voice thick with tears. "Maya, please come home. Grandma's asking for you. We need to be together as a family right now." I did fly back, but I stayed in a hotel and only went to the hospital. Grandma recovered fully, thankfully, and during one of our quiet moments alone, she squeezed my hand and said, "I'm proud of you for building your own life, sweetheart. Sometimes leaving is the bravest thing you can do." I spent 3 days in town and didn't set foot in my childhood home. The second attempt came at Christmas. Dad sent a formal email, not a heartfelt letter, an email, saying they'd reserved my place at Christmas dinner and hoped I'd reconsider my self-imposed exile. The phrase made me laugh, self-imposed exile, as if I was the one who'd created this situation. I spent Christmas skiing in Colorado with friends instead. The real crisis hit in my second year in Seattle. The startup went public, and my stock options vested at a value that made my head spin. Suddenly, I wasn't just financially stable, I was actually wealthy. Not millionaire wealthy, but comfortable for life wealthy. Enough to buy a house with cash, to never worry about money again, to make choices based on what I wanted rather than what I could afford. I didn't announce this windfall, but somehow word got back to my family. Maybe through LinkedIn, maybe through mutual friends, maybe just through the general grapevine that exists in small towns. Because suddenly, after a year and a half of minimal contact, everyone was very interested in rebuilding our relationship. Sarah called first, her voice bright and cheerful as if we'd talked yesterday. "Maya, I saw the article about your company going public. That's so amazing. I always knew you'd be successful." The article she mentioned was in the local paper, a small piece about hometown success stories. Someone had obviously been paying attention to my career from a distance. "I was thinking," Sarah continued, "maybe I could come visit you in Seattle? I've always wanted to see the Pacific Northwest, and it would be so great to catch up." Then Mom called, suddenly very interested in my life and career. "We've been telling everyone about your success, honey. We're so proud of you. I was thinking, maybe we could plan a family vacation together? Somewhere nice, my treat?" Even Dad got on the phone during one of Mom's calls. "Maya, I think we may have handled your graduation poorly. We were trying to teach you independence, but maybe our methods weren't the best. We'd like to make it up to you. The calls increased in frequency and intensity. Sarah started sending me links to apartments in Seattle, hinting that she might want to move out there if I could help her get started. Mom began forwarding job listings, suggesting that maybe Dad could find work in my city and they could relocate to be closer to me. Even distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years started reaching out, all of them suddenly very interested in my well-being and success. But the real revelation came during a call with my Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, who'd always been more direct than the rest of the family. "Your parents are in trouble, Maya," she said bluntly. "Your dad's business is failing, they refinanced the house twice, and Sarah's college loans are in default because she dropped out after one semester. They're looking at bankruptcy." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. The timing of their renewed interest in our relationship, the sudden pride in my accomplishments, the hints about family vacations and relocations and visits. They didn't want me back. They wanted my money. That night, I sat in my beautiful apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, drinking wine that cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a week, and I made a decision. I was going to go home for Sarah's birthday, her 21st, which would be a big celebration. I was going to sit down with my family and have the conversation we should have had years ago. But I was going to do it on my terms, with the clarity that distance and success had given me. I booked a flight and a hotel room. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Sarah's birthday party was at the same restaurant where they'd given me that bill 3 years earlier. I walked in during the dinner just as Dad was standing up to make a toast about his wonderful daughters and how proud he was of both of us. The silence when they saw me was deafening. "Maya!" Sarah jumped up, her face lighting up with what seemed like genuine joy. "You came! I can't believe you came!" She hugged me, and for a moment, I remembered the little sister I'd loved so much, before everything got complicated by favoritism and resentment and money. "Happy birthday, Sarah," I said, handing her a gift, a nice piece of jewelry, thoughtful but not extravagant. Mom was crying, Dad looked stunned, and several other family members were staring like I'd risen from the dead. "Can we talk?" I said to my parents. All of us. Privately. We moved to a quieter corner of the restaurant, and I looked at the 3 people who'd shaped my early life so profoundly. "I know about the financial problems," I said without preamble. "I know about Dad's business, the house, Sarah's loans. I know that's why you've suddenly decided I'm worth talking to again." Mom started to protest, but I held up a hand. "I'm not angry about it," I continued. Which was mostly true. "I understand desperation. I understand how pride can make people do things they wouldn't normally do. But I need you to understand something too." I looked at each of them in turn. "When you gave Sarah a car and gave me a bill, you told me exactly what I was worth to this family. You made it clear that my value was measured in what I could contribute, not in who I was. So that's the relationship we have now." "Maya, please," Dad said, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "We made mistakes. We see that now. We're sorry." "I believe you're sorry," I said. "I believe you regret how things turned out. But sorry doesn't change the foundation you built. Sorry doesn't erase years of feeling like I had to earn love that Sarah got for free." I pulled out an envelope. My own envelope this time, prepared and printed on professional letterhead. "This is a loan agreement," I said, handing it to Dad. $50,000, enough to get you back on your feet and cover Sarah's educational expenses. The terms are generous, low interest, flexible payment schedule. Their faces lit up with hope and relief. "But," I continued, "this is a business transaction. I'm not your daughter in this scenario, I'm your creditor. You pay me back according to the terms. We have a professional relationship. You don't. And I'll pursue collection through proper legal channels. No family guilt, no emotional manipulation, no appeals to blood relations." "Maya," Mom whispered, It doesn't have to be like this. We can be a family again? I stood up, suddenly feeling very tired. You're right. It doesn't have to be like this. It could have been different if you'd made different choices 3 years ago. But you didn't. You taught me that love in this family is conditional and transactional. So now it is. I looked at Sarah, who was sitting quietly, tears running down her cheeks. Sarah, you didn't create the situation, and I don't want you to suffer for it. But I also can't pretend that things are normal when they're not. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be separate from all this. It has to be honest. She nodded, unable to speak. I turned back to my parents. Think about the loan offer. Take your time. But understand that this is what I'm offering. Help, but not reconciliation. Support, but not forgiveness. I wish things were different, but they aren't. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving them with the papers and their choices. 6 months later, they signed the loan agreement. They've been making payments on time, and Dad's new business is slowly recovering. Sarah and I talk occasionally, careful conversations about neutral topics, but conversations nonetheless. She's back in school, studying something she actually cares about this time, and she's paying her own way. My parents and I exchange holiday cards and brief, polite phone calls. They update me on family news, I update them on my career. It's cordial and distant, and exactly what they taught me relationships in our family should be. Sometimes people ask if I regret not forgiving them, not trying to rebuild what we had. But the truth is, we never had what they're imagining we lost. What we had was a dynamic where my worth was always in question, where I was expected to be grateful for scraps while watching someone else get abundance. Now we have something different. It's not warm or loving or what families are supposed to be. But it's honest. It's based on clear expectations and mutual respect for boundaries. It's a relationship I can sustain without losing myself in the process. And sometimes, I think that's actually better than what we had before. Because now finally we all know exactly where we stand. The truth is, they're not begging me to come back because they miss me. They're begging me to come back because they need me. And maybe, in some strange way, acknowledging that need honestly is the most authentic relationship we've ever had. I built a life without them, and it's a good life. I have people who value me for who I am, work that fulfills me, and financial security I earned through my own efforts. I don't need their approval anymore, and that freedom has made everything else possible. Sometimes the best revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you. Sometimes it's building something so beautiful without them that their absence becomes a gift rather than a wound. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough.